You need to step back from this counter right now.
I'm waiting to check out. Is there a problem here?
Management needs to handle this situation immediately. Sir?
You might want to reconsider your approach here. Just some advice.
On a calm Saturday afternoon in March 2024, inside the crowded aisles of Riverside Shopping Center in Columbus, Ohio, one man's prejudice slammed into a truth he never expected. What began as a normal grocery run quickly turned into an incident that would ruin his life in under 15 minutes. Trevor Wilkins walked in that day believing he was untouchable. He noticed someone he decided did not belong, someone he thought he could shame without any fallout. He unleashed a wave of racist abuse at a man who was only there to shop. He yelled, he mocked, he demanded action. He even dialed the police himself, fully convinced they would support him. But the moment officers stepped inside the store, everything Trevor believed collapsed instantly. The man he targeted was not just another customer. The badge, the position, the power. In one reckless outburst, Trevor had destroyed his career and committed a crime. What followed became one of the quickest examples of karma the city had ever seen. The shock on his face when the truth set in was unforgettable to everyone who witnessed it. Before we break down exactly how this played out, we want to hear from you. We're creating something meaningful here, a space that challenges injustice and values honesty. So let us know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Let's see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, or even if you've been around before, hit subscribe and tap that like button. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that consequences are real. Now, let's rewind to what happened that day. Riverside Shopping Center was packed that afternoon, with families preparing for the week ahead. Toward the back of the store, in the organic produce section, a man in his late 40s carefully chose vegetables and placed them into his cart. His name was Hogan Wade. He wore a plain gray jacket, jeans, and worn-in sneakers. Nothing about him stood out. No uniform, no badge, no sign of the authority he carried during the work week. Hogan had learned to value moments like these. Time off meant blending in, being just another shopper. He picked up tomatoes, inspected them, put a few back. He added spinach, chicken breast from the meat aisle, and a carton of eggs. His daughter was returning from college that evening, and he planned to cook her favorite dinner. Ordinary plans, ordinary food, ordinary day. He moved calmly through the store, mentally checking off his list. Shoppers passed without paying attention. An elderly woman smiled near the bread section. A young couple guided their toddler around him politely. Everything felt normal. Everything felt calm. With about 15 items in his basket, Hogan headed toward the checkout area. 8 registers were open. He chose lane 5, the shortest line, with only 2 customers ahead. He waited quietly, glancing at his phone for a message from his daughter. The line advanced. The cashier, a friendly young woman named Sophie, greeted each customer with a warm smile. Hogan stepped forward as the customer before him finished and walked away. That's when everything began to unravel. What happened over the next minute would change everything, because just 3 lanes away stood a man who had already decided Hogan didn't belong. Trevor Wilkins had been watching him for several minutes. He hovered near the magazine rack, pretending to browse, but his focus never left the man in the gray jacket. Trevor was a familiar face at the store, someone who believed frequent visits gave him control over who was welcome. At 52, he was heavyset, balding, and wore a constant scowl shaped by years of blaming others for his own failures. Something about Hogan set him off. Maybe it was Trevor's own toxic beliefs about who deserved to be in what he considered his store. Whatever the trigger, Trevor made his choice. He left his half-loaded cart behind and marched straight toward lane 5, where Hogan was placing groceries onto the belt. Trevor didn't hesitate or lower his voice. He pushed past an elderly man in lane 6 and positioned himself inches from Hogan, nearly brushing shoulders. Sophie had just scanned the first item when Trevor's voice sliced through the store noise. He ordered Hogan to move back. He said people like him had no place there. The words were harsh, ugly, and filled with unmistakable hatred. Shoppers turned to stare. The relaxed buzz of the store vanished, replaced by thick tension. Hogan didn't move. His hand paused above his wallet. Slowly, he turned to face Trevor, his expression calm but unreadable. Trevor escalated. His voice grew louder, his posture more aggressive. He claimed the store was respectable, not meant for people who probably couldn't afford what they were stealing. The accusation lingered, cruel and unfounded. Sophie froze, eyes wide. She tried to speak, but didn't know how to step in. Another cashier nearby reached for the phone to alert a manager. Hogan still said nothing. He simply watched Trevor with a focus that should have been a warning. But Trevor was lost in his own anger. He was only warming up, unaware that he was destroying himself. A crowd gathered. Shoppers left their carts and edged closer. Some filmed on their phones. Others whispered in shock. Trevor fed of the attention. He waved his arms wildly, shouting so loudly it echoed through the store. He pointed at Hogan, then toward the exit, demanding someone remove him immediately. The store manager finally appeared. Kevin, a slim man in his 30s, looked completely out of his depth. He stepped in carefully, placing himself between them. Kevin asked Trevor to calm down and back away. He explained that all customers were welcome and that there was no issue. Trevor ignored him. He redirected his fury at Kevin, accusing him of lowering standards and letting the wrong people into a store that once had value. Hogan stayed silent. He shifted slightly aside, no longer blocking the register, his groceries still untouched on the belt. His arms rested loosely at his sides. His breathing stayed even, his eyes locked on Trevor. Something in that stare made a few people instinctively step back. This wasn't fear. This wasn't intimidation. This was calculation. Kevin tried again to defuse things. He offered to check Hogan out at another lane. He suggested Trevor return to shopping, but Trevor had gone too far. He demanded the police be called. He insisted proper authorities handle it since management wouldn't. He raised his phone, threatening to call himself. Several shoppers defended Hogan. A woman in her 60s said she'd been near him the whole time and saw nothing wrong. A younger man told Trevor to stop and leave him alone. Their words only hardened Trevor's belief that he was fighting some noble cause. He shouted over them, called them foolish, accused them of ignoring what was really happening in their neighborhood. The store felt ready to explode. Everyone could feel the tension building, like a storm ready to break. Trevor, still blind to the disaster he was creating, reached for his phone, hands trembling, and dialed 911. He turned slightly away from Hogan, speaking loud enough for the nearby shoppers to hear. He told the dispatcher there was an emergency at Riverside Shopping Center, requiring immediate police presence. He claimed he felt threatened. He described a suspicious individual causing a scene and refusing to leave. The emphasis on suspicious made his prejudice clear. The dispatcher instructed him to stay on the line and assured him officers were on the way. Trevor ended the call and turned back to Hogan, a smug grin spreading across his face. He announced to the crowd that the police were coming and that order would soon be restored. He planted his feet, folded his arms, and stood as if personally guarding the situation. Kevin, the store manager, looked drained and defeated. He had tried every tool at his disposal and could do nothing now but wait for outside help. Hogan finally acted. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly, making several onlookers tense. But instead of aggression, he pulled out his own phone and calmly made a call. His tone was even, measured, completely unlike Trevor's frantic shouting. Hogan gave his name, requested a specific unit, and provided the shopping center's address, asking for assistance with the situation. The call lasted under 30 seconds. When he hung up, Trevor scoffed, mocking the idea that Hogan had called for backup. He claimed no help could save him from what was coming. The previously vocal shoppers grew quiet. The older woman who had defended Hogan looked uneasy. The young man who spoke up appeared uncertain. Something about the energy in the store had shifted, though no one could pinpoint exactly why. Hogan slipped his phone back into his pocket, then did something unexpected. He addressed Sophie, the cashier, apologizing for the disturbance and assuring her it was not her fault. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Sophie nodded, eyes flicking between Hogan and Trevor. He then reassured Kevin with the same words, confirming that management was not to blame. Outside, sirens began to wail, growing louder with every second. Trevor's grin widened. He moved toward the entrance, ready to greet the officers and direct them. In his mind, he had already won, but Hogan stayed near lane 5, expression steady, waiting for the doors to open and for Trevor's carefully constructed world to collapse. 3 patrol cars arrived, lights flashing. The sirens cut off as they parked near the entrance. Trevor stepped forward, rehearsing his story, bracing for validation and victory. Finally, 4 officers entered the store, moving deliberately, quickly assessing the scene. The lead officer, a tall woman in her 40s, took in every detail with sharp eyes. Behind her, 2 men and a woman, all in uniform, followed. Trevor immediately raised his hand to get their attention, certain they would see things his way. Before the officers could speak, Trevor launched into his explanation. He pointed at Hogan, claiming he had caused trouble, acted suspiciously, and refused to leave when asked. He exaggerated details, saying he felt endangered, that other customers were uneasy, and that store management was helpless. The lead officer raised her hand to halt him. She told Trevor to step aside and allow them to handle the matter. He hesitated, but moved back, continuing to insist they needed to understand what had occurred. The officers ignored him and walked straight to lane 5, where Hogan waited calmly. Shoppers instinctively parted, filming with their phones. Sophie clutched the counter edge, while Kevin froze near the service desk. Everything seemed slowed down as the 4 officers approached Hogan. Trevor watched eagerly, convinced they would demand ID, question him, and remove him from the store. He imagined their gratitude, the praise for his vigilance, his vindication complete. Then the lead officer stopped a few feet from Hogan and raised her right hand in a precise military-style salute. The 3 officers behind her mirrored her exactly, moving in perfect unison. The lead officer's voice carried clearly in the suddenly quiet store. Chief Wade. They acknowledged him by rank, offering assistance and waiting for his instructions. Trevor's face went pale, his mouth hanging open, unable to form a sound. The shock rippled through the crowd. Phones recorded every second. The elderly woman who had defended Hogan clasped her hands over her mouth. The young man who spoke up shook his head in disbelief. And Trevor Wilkins, near the entrance, realized with horror that he had just verbally attacked and threatened the city's chief of police. Hogan nodded briefly to the officers and spoke softly, his words meant only for them, yet carrying undeniable authority. He outlined the facts: unprovoked harassment, racial slurs, false emergency report, and business disruption. The lead officer listened, jaw tight, eyes occasionally flicking to Trevor. Each point was acknowledged, documented, and actionable. Then Chief Wade dropped the bombshell. He wanted Trevor Wilkins arrested and charged. The lead officer, flanked by 2 colleagues, advanced toward Trevor. His hands went up defensively, words fumbling, claiming misunderstandings, insisting he was protecting the community. His voice cracked as the officers reached him. The lead officer instructed him to place his hands behind his back. Trevor's eyes darted wildly, desperately seeking help from the watching shoppers, but the realization had fully set in. His life had just changed forever. No one stepped forward to defend him. No voice rose on his behalf. The handcuffs snapped into place. Trevor's rights were read aloud, the words echoing throughout the store. False report, assault, disorderly conduct. Each charge struck him like a hammer. Tears rolled down his cheeks as reality hit with full force. He pleaded with the officers to reconsider, insisting his career would be ruined, begging for mercy, talking about his family, claiming he had made a mistake. But the officers remained professional, calm, and unwavering. They followed the chief's direct orders. As they led him toward the exit, Trevor tried one last glance at Hogan, maybe hoping for forgiveness or some chance to undo what had happened. But Hogan had already turned his attention elsewhere, speaking with Kevin, the manager, offering apologies for the disruption in the store. He thanked Sophie, the cashier, for her patience and acknowledged the shoppers who had spoken up, telling them their courage had mattered. Calm and composed, he handled the situation with authority. Trevor was ushered out through the automatic doors and into a patrol car. Shoppers pressed their faces against the windows as the vehicle drove off, lights still flashing. The man who had been so sure of his hatred, so confident in his own righteousness, was gone. A routine Saturday shopping trip had transformed into one of the quickest, most complete lessons in justice anyone in the store had ever witnessed. The fallout happened quickly. Within hours, videos from multiple angles had spread across social media, capturing his tirade, his smug 911 call, and the moment of utter humiliation when officers saluted Hogan. By evening, local news reported the story. National outlets followed by the next morning. Trevor's face became instantly recognizable, linked to headlines about karma and justice served. His employer, a mid-sized insurance company where he had worked for 12 years, received hundreds of emails and calls. Before the weekend ended, they released a statement. Trevor Wilkins no longer represented the company. They emphasized diversity, condemning discrimination in all forms. Trevor lost his job without severance, references, or recourse. His career ended before he even made bail. Legal consequences were just beginning. The false 911 call carried severe penalties, and assault charges, backed by witnesses and video evidence, gave prosecutors a solid case. His lawyer suggested sensitivity training or community service, but Chief Wade Toffus insisted on maximum charges. This wasn't just a single incident, it was about sending a clear message. Hatred delivered with confidence and malice would have real consequences. Within 2 weeks, Trevor's wife filed for separation, telling friends she could no longer recognize the man captured in those videos. The grocery stores he had frequented for years barred him from returning. His church encouraged him to find a new congregation. Every part of his social life crumbled. Once considered a respected member of the community, he was now shunned. Chief Hoban Wade never spoke publicly beyond a brief statement, reminding people that hatred and assumptions harm everyone they touch. He thanked the shoppers who had defended a stranger, calling their courage the real story worth celebrating. He returned to his duties, continued leading his department, and prepared the meal for his daughter when she arrived home from college. For him, the incident was unfortunate, but not surprising. He had faced racism in and out of uniform throughout his career. But for Trevor Wilkins, that Saturday became a dividing line, before and after. Every hateful word, every racist assumption, every bit of confidence in systemic protection collapsed in the span of a single salute. He targeted the wrong person at the wrong moment, paying the full price. 15 minutes of anger cost him reputation, job, family, and standing in society. A court date was set 3 months later. He would face a judge and the law, but the real punishment had already been delivered. He had learned publicly and humiliatingly that the hierarchies he believed protected him were illusions. Karma didn't negotiate. Justice here was simple. Trevor Wilkins made choices rooted in hatred and paid in full. There was no gray area. He thought he could shame someone he considered beneath him and weaponized his privilege, blind to consequences. Chief Hogan Wade represented something Trevor could never grasp: dignity without proclamation, authority without uniform, and the truth that respect is earned, not assumed. The real heroes were the shoppers who stood up for a stranger, showing courage and reminding us that silence enables hatred, while one voice can inspire many. So we ask, what would you have done? Would you have spoken out, recorded it, or stayed silent? Moments like this happen daily in different forms. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Trevor got what he deserved, or was it too much? Have you witnessed something similar? Share your experience. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share so these lessons reach those who need them most. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.